Hi, I'm David Robertson, and this is another educational video from artistblacksmith.com. Today I'll be talking about leaves and how to make them. I'll be going through some different samples. Those are the ginkgo leaves. These are small leaves that I use on fences and railings and gates. Larger leaves, and these are done under the air hammer. And another type of leaf also done under the air hammer. So let's get started. We'll start with the simple ones. These I worked with a 1/4 inch by 1 inch flat bar, and the first step is to make a 45-degree cut at the end of the bar. And I'm hammering through on the top of a hot cut, which is a chisel-shaped tool that fits in the hardy hole. Cut partway through, and then use a pair of pliers to break off the corner, and that gives you a nice 45-degree angle. Next, you're hammering that corner into the bar and pulling the point into the center. This creates a quick finial, and you could use this in pickets on a fence or any choice that you wanted a point on the end of a bar. But for the leaves, it gives a nice sharp point, and it's not very long. Next, I curve the point over a little bit just to create the very tip of the leaf. This is a spring fuller, and I'll create 2 notches at the base of the leaf. This notch is top and bottom at the same time. Turn the bar over so that you work equally from both sides. And this creates a silhouette of the leaf. And now I'll take it over to the air hammer, and I'm drawing out the actual stem portion on the leaf. I take this most of the way down on the air hammer, and then I'll go back to forging the leaf itself. When I'm incorporating leaves into a project, I cut the stem off, and then I'll use it on the weld it onto the final piece. What I'm showing you here is the cross peen of my standard forging hammer, smithing hammer, and this is how I'm going to make the first leaf. I'm using exclusively the cross peen to spread the leaf out, increase its width. It starts off being about the 1 inch wide of the bar, and I end up with close to 2 inches wide just using the cross peen. I then will switch the cross peen and come in diagonally so that I create the veins on the leaf. This is a quick leaf to produce. It only takes a few heats to make a good sized leaf, and there's a lot of texture and shape to it. It's quite dramatic in the right setting. You can see I've worked it out a fair ways now. Now this is when I'm working actually on the diagonal portion of it. I work one side on the diagonal, and then I'll switch and I'll work the other one on the diagonal. The cross peen of the hammer stretches it in one direction at a time, and I can increase the width or the length this way. I try and proportion the leaves so that they're fairly about as wide as they are long. If they're much longer than that on this size, it starts to not look like a leaf. And I'm just creating a series of curves in it just so it looks like a little bit more of a real leaf. So in this one I'm using the rounding hammer. The rounding hammer is one of my favorite tools. It spreads the metal in all directions at once. So I've done exactly the same process where I've nipped the corner off, tipped the very end down a little bit, shouldered it, and drawn it out. And there's no difference in that. Now I'm using the rounding hammer, and I'm coming down right in the middle of the leaf first, and I spread the lobes out to either side. Now with this particular leaf, I'm going to use a chisel to create the veins down the center. Now this is a little bit hard to see, but it's clamped down on the anvil, and I'm doing overlapping chisel strikes down the center to create a line on the leaf. And then I'll come back in with diagonal strokes with the chisel and that will create the lateral veins on the leaf. There's lots of different ways of doing this, and certainly leaves can be left up to your imagination, but try and make them aesthetically pleasing, and so that people recognize exactly what they are, that they are leaves. I'm using a straight chisel here to create the lines, but you could use teardrops, you could use circles, you could use ovals, curved lines, anything that you wanted to create that shape in the leaf. Now this is a different type of leaf. I call this a ginkgo leaf, and what I'm doing right now is making a heart-shaped silhouette on the end of the bar. I've cut a notch out of the tip and I've rounded the corners off previously. This is where I'm going, but only with the hand hammer. The previous picture was done with the air hammer, which you'll see the process of. Now I'm using the cross peen again, but I'm creating radial strokes along the axis of the leaf. So the first one starts in the center, and then I work out to the edge, sort of like spokes on a wheel, and this tends to flare the heart and flare the shape of the leaf out. Takes a few more heats to do this, trying to work the metal fairly thin, down from 1/4 of an inch to maybe 1/8 of an inch in thickness. And you can see I'm turning the bar. I'm also turning the hammer as well. You may not see that very clearly in the video. You can't quite see the texture of it, but that's how it turns out. So I'm using the air hammer here, and I'm making the leaf that was in the picture, in the still photograph, and I'm using specialty dies under the air hammer, and essentially they are like 2 cross peens. They're fairly sharply curved in one direction and then straight along the top. And you can see I'm rotating the bar back and forth, trying to create those radial spokes. Now the nice thing with working it this way under the air hammer is I get top and bottom or 2-sided texture. So on a larger gate or grill or whatever your project is, it's much more dramatic to have the hammer marks and the forge work or the veining on both sides of your leaf. And again, the same techniques. I've just created the bar, rounded it off, notched it, shouldered it, and then sketched it out under the air hammer. All that, because of the limitations on the video, I couldn't show you. This is another leaf, again pointed. I'm using 3/8 by 1.5 inch flat bar here, and I'm drawing out the center with the same dies that I was talking about, and then I'll work on the edges. And again, I work on the diagonal with the edges as opposed to straight across. And you can curve the point on this. I didn't in this case, but you certainly could. You can see how I'm working on the diagonal of the one side and switching over to the other side now. Now as I was working this, I slipped a little bit with the die, and I ended up with a lobe pulling off the one side. Well, outside of the video, I quickly just ground it on the grinder. You could use an angle grinder or a bench grinder just to smooth it out. Popped it back into the forge, took another few heats on it, and straightened it out, no problem. So don't be afraid if you go a little bit far with a leaf to go back in and trim it up. You can see the lobe right at the top there, and then that's with it smoothed off, and then some curvature put into the leaf. Now you'll see a photo of that at the end as well, so you can see the texture developed on it. That's another style of leaf, basically the same processes, and a third style. That was the one I was just working on. For more information about blacksmithing, please join my free membership site at artistblacksmith.com. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the video.